Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to inspire and motivate people to never give up on themselves or their dreams. We will chat with highly successful people from all walks of life and discuss what motivates and drives them to successfully attack life head on and never give up. Welcome to episode number 10 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and the theme of the day is leading by example. Our quote of the day comes to us from Lewis Cass. People may doubt what you say, but they will believe what you do. I'm thrilled for today's episode. Our guest is a man of many talents. As a podcaster, author, speaker, and coach, the question is, what doesn't he do? He's extremely passionate about helping others, and I think you will really enjoy today's podcast. With that being said, it is my honor to introduce Jimmy Lee Velez. Jimmy Lee, I would like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Thank you very much, Christopher. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you guys.
The pleasure is all ours, my man. So with all the negativity in the media today, the foundation of our podcast is to motivate and inspire people to never give up. I wanted to ask if you could share a personal story about perseverance or perhaps a challenging time that tested you, but you kept on going and never quit.
Yes, so my background is in personal development, and one of the projects that I wanted to take on was a audio tape where I was kind of giving these motivational talks, and we had some beats in the background, and I kind of wanted to put a spin on how we're motivating people and how we're inspiring people to become the best versions of themselves. And when I was doing this project, I had no background in audio, no background in singing, nothing like that. So I just went around and started using my resources. And one of the biggest, things that popped up was money, and it kept things, you need all the audio equipment, you need to know certain people. And I started reaching out, on Facebook to my social media stuff, and people started coming, together, and the project started building itself. And I just made up this random date, like in September, we're going to release this audio book or this audio file, and we're going to call it the Motivation Files. It's going to be super inspirational. It's going to motivate you. And I was saying all this stuff, and in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, how in the world am I going to make this happen? How is this going to come together? And there was a bunch of people who, when you have an idea and it's kind of different, all these, you're kind of like a magnet, and everyone wants to be a part of it. And all of a sudden, you start to realize that people just talk and don't follow through with what they're saying. And so kind of left me hanging. And I kept telling people my word was already out there that this is going to get released in September. And these people who said that they're going to, help me produce this product kind of fell through. So I just kept asking people. So the people who initially helped me, I kind of used them for their strengths and moved on. I didn't get stuck with them saying, I can't do it. One guy was, he was an audio guy, and it was nothing negative against him. Our schedules were literally crashing. So I worked during the day, and I was available in the evening to do the recordings and, get the project going, where he worked second shift. So when he was working, I was off. When I was off, he was working. So basically what we did was he kind of made the beats for me, put everything together, and I just grabbed them, and he was supposed to produce the entire thing, and he was kind of bummed out about it. And so was I, because our energies were really connecting. Our schedules just weren't. So I kind of moved on from that. And I was kind of down and out, and I had conversations with my wife. I said, I don't think this is going to work. I tell people that this is coming out in September, nothing's following through, and she's like, just keep at it, just keep believing, keep asking some of your friends. And she popped up and said, what about your good friend Jay? He went to school for music. And I said, oh my God, let me ask Jay. So when I asked Jay, I kept explaining what this was, and he didn't understand, but I got him in the studio. We recorded everything. It all worked out. Everybody was happy because the audio guy was able to have his beats on there. Jay was able to be a part of, this new project that he had no idea about. And I was able to deliver on my promise and still persevere, as you said, through the entire process and come out on top. And I actually released on September 31st. Is the last day of September, but I kept my word, and the project was released, the Motivation Files.
That's great. That's a really cool story about perseverance. And what does it that say? What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I know there's a quote out there that I've heard, and I don't want to attempt to say who it's from or who said it, but they talk about a dream versus a goal, and when you actually put a date at the end of it, and then you tell somebody about it, your percentage of actually accomplishing that goal is dramatically higher. And I think that's a interesting story you share, because you were talking to your wife and to other people about getting out there by this specific time. And I think if you had not said that to other people, maybe it might not have come in September. Maybe it would have been October or November, or perhaps never. But definitely a really interesting story about sticking to it.
Yeah, man, there was something about saying the date, as you said, that created an anchor, and there was a level of commitment and accountability, which we all need to be held accountable towards something. And if I was a leader and I was a man of my word, and that's all we have in this life, where I had to stick to it. And you're absolutely right. There's something to that component with being accountable.
No, that's so true, and that's why so many people in all different walks of life that are successful have what are called accountability partners, or they have somebody that they have a weekly or bi-weekly calls or meetings with, because at the end of the day, a lot of times there's a difference of having a goal or an objective by yourself versus going and physically or verbally telling somebody that this is what I'm doing by this specific date. Please hold me accountable.
Absolutely. Yep. Exactly.
Many of our listeners are into personal development, as I know you are as well. I was curious if you have a favorite book, or if perhaps you've read something recently that you might want to recommend to our listeners.
So the book that completely created a paradigm shift, what they call Bob Proctor calls it a paradigm shift. So it kind of gets you thinking from one direction of how you view life to completely a whole other direction. A lot of people call them like life-threatening events. Thank God I didn't have to go through any of that to, have a paradigm shift. But there was a book called The Power by Rhonda Byrne. And she was actually the creator of the book titled The Secret that came out back in 2006, 2007. And this book, I believe, came out in 2010. And when I read it, I just connected. It resonated with me, and I completely changed the way I saw life in general. My results changed. And I couldn't even tell you specifically what about the book. I guess her language that she used made sense to me. So it's basically her elaborating on The Secret. And for those who aren't familiar with The Secret, it's a story or a book that explains the law of attraction. And they actually have experts from all around the world that kind of give their spin on how the law of attraction works. And it's a law that you can actually apply to become a better version of yourself and actually attain all the things that you want in life if applied correctly. So she uses the law of attraction and uses the power, to kind of add to what the law of attraction is. And there's just something about this book. I mean, one of my favorite parts of the book is right in the beginning. She kind of explains that you're a magnet. And just straight out of the book, page 15, she says, you are creating your life with your thoughts and your feelings. Whatever you think and feel creates everything that happens to you and everything you experience in your life. So the part, I guess, that I loved about all that is that I'm responsible for myself and my life, where before I didn't understand. I just was blaming everybody, pointing fingers, saying that my results aren't coming in because of, someone else didn't follow through. Where here, this put me in the driver's seat, right? This put me in control of my own life. I was able to make things happen. And exactly like the story I just mentioned about the motivation files, I made things happen, even though things aren't going to work out smoothly. That's what these books are for. Personal development is there to help get you through those rough times and make life make sense.
No, that's one of my favorite books, The Secret, and The Power is another book that I've read, and you just made me think about it. I'm going to take my copy off the shelf and take a look at it later. So thank you for sharing that. Now, Jimmy
sure.
Lee, you are the host of one of the top-rated iTunes podcasts out there, which is titled Rotated Views. And I must tell my listeners that it is an awesome, awesome podcast, and I would highly recommend it. If you don't mind me asking, what made you launch your podcast, and what has been the most challenging part so far?
So what made us, first of all, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Actually, for the listeners out there, we will soon be releasing Christopher J. Worth from No Quit Living on our podcast in episode number 55. So keep a lookout for that. Rotatedviews.com. How it all started was me, my brothers, and one of my good buddies were always around the fire pit. And we had these fascinating conversations. I mean, we're talking about beyond sports. We're talking about life and getting advice from each other and bouncing ideas off of each other. And for years, year in and year out, we just kept telling each other, we got to capture these conversations. I'm sure there's another group of guys or girls that are out there that do this, that can use this, information that we're releasing. And so we went ahead and we created the Rotated Views. It's life from various perspectives. We kind of give a positive spin on life. And our listeners are really apt to listening to what we have to say, because we're not only brothers, we're not only relatives, we're not only good friends, but we're fathers, we're husbands, we're sons, we're brothers. It's very exciting and relatable to people, and that there's a positive message to be said when, on an everyday basis, when you turn on the news, we're getting inundated with negative stuff. And we just kind of wanted to put something positive out there and a really cool spin. I would say personally, our biggest challenge was getting comfortable recording these natural conversations in a very unnatural setting. So when we're out by the fire pit, it was very natural. You're kind of just laid back, maybe smoking a cigar or whatever. And the conversation kind of just developed itself. I guess the harder part was artificially trying to make that happen in a studio and kind of force the conversation while we're hitting the record button. So, but even with that being said, we're doing fantastic. Our audience is very receptive, and I do appreciate you actually jumping on our podcast as well.
No, definitely. And it's funny. There's a quote. It's one of my all-time favorite quotes, which is by Shannon Sharpe, the former NFL player, where he says, "I tell people all the time, you have to become comfortable being uncomfortable." And I think that's just such a great quote in regards to the importance of, if you want to get past whatever limitation it is, it could be financially, it could be sports, it could be career, it could be family, you have to get out of your comfort zone. And John Lee Dumas, who's got one of the highest rated podcasts out there, he talks about all the time, and he says, almost every podcast, it seems, that all the magic happens outside of your comfort zone. So speaking of quotes, I was curious, do you have a favorite quote?
Yeah, actually, it's more of a Bible verse. And I just, for some reason, it was one of those things when I read it, it hit me, it made sense. And it goes like this. It's from Matthew 21:22. You can pray for anything, and if you have faith, you will receive it. And the reason why I like that is because it kind of resonated with The Secret. They had the ask, believe, receive kind of concept, and it's really the feeling, the thought of what we want. That actual feeling is what attracts, what it is that we want into our lives. And that is the fastest way you can manifest, the life of your desires in the most simplistic way right there. So yeah, Matthew 21:22 is kind of, how I basically run my life. And the second one is out of Mark 11:24. I tell you, you can pray for anything, and if you believe you've received it, it will be yours. And it's funny because it kind of says it in the past tense. So it's if you just believe something, it's already yours. If you can manifest it in your mind, you can manifest it in a physical form. And that's what I guess attracted me to the book, The Power, because Rhonda Byrne was saying that in so many words, but kind of giving a different spin to it. So I know I use Bible verses, but that same information is found in The Secret. It's found in The Power. It's found in most personal development books. But, it's kind of originated from, these, verses, Bible verses.
No, those are two great verses, and falling along the lines of personal development and always looking to have goals and things. Where do you want to be 5 years from now?
So 5 years from now, I talk about this with my good buddies all the time, and kind of off air, we kind of go over some things. So to be honest with you, if I can be out there impacting lives, motivating people to become the best versions of themselves in a speaking, coaching, mentoring way, that's where I want to have it. I want to have my brand, JimmyLeeVelez.com, to be a national, international brand where, if you go to that website, or you hire me, or one of my partners, what you're getting. You're getting a name brand, and we will deliver. You're going to get motivated. You're going to get inspired. Your life is about to take a complete paradigm shift, as I did back in 2006 when I first met the secret in personal development.
No, I like your tagline. So if you wouldn't mind repeating it, is being the best version of yourself or themselves. What did you say again?
Yeah, so it's motivating others to become the best versions of themselves.
No, I like that. That's a great quote, and we'll put that in the show notes as well.
Yeah, and here's the reason why we said that. We all can relate to getting a new device, right? So when you get a new phone, you get a new laptop, we always get these little messages that pop up and say, update the latest version. Even whatever apps that you have on your phones, on your mobile devices, you have to update them every once in a while. But a lot of times people forget that we have to refresh, restart, reset our minds as well, our bodies as well, our relationships as well, our finances as well. It's that comfort level that's going to kill you. So it's kind of what you're saying, what Shannon Sharp was saying, getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, and you kind of have to constantly be on it and constantly, revolutionizing yourself and your mentality.
No, I couldn't agree more. You always need to be improving, and I believe there's a quote that says if you're staying in the same place, you're moving backwards, actually. So I think that's really the foundation of personal development. I think sometimes personal development gets put in the same category as the self-help, and I think, unfortunately, some people, it's got a negative connotation to it, but I think my definition and what we talk about at No Quit Living with the personal development component is very similar to yours, which is why I asked you to repeat your tagline, is because it's helping motivate people to always try to be and do their best. And if you're always improving, even if it's just one small degree every day, if you compound that over a week, a month, a year, a lifetime, you will be such a better version of yourself. But the end result to that is you become a better person for your company. So you're a better employer. You become a better person for your family. So whether you're a husband, a son, a father, a brother, and it just has so much overflow into so many areas of your life, and it's really powerful. So along the lines of some of those things, I was curious, who has had the greatest influence in your life?
That would definitely be my family. There's family members. Specifically was my dad. My dad passed away back in 2012, but he was kind of our role model. He kind of set the pace. He set the tone of our family. The way he led us was in such a caring and passive way. It's funny because we always hear the quote that say, what you do speaks so loud, I cannot hear what you say. And my dad was the exemplified that, because he wasn't a guy who would give you a speech. He didn't bombard you with quotes. He didn't sit with you kneecap to kneecap and have this deep conversation with you. He showed us what it was like to be a man. He showed us what it was like to be like a Christian and a loving husband and father. What he did on a daily basis. He showed us how to hustle. He showed us how to work hard. My dad was a guy who always had 2 and 3 jobs, and even on the weekends we would go to flea markets and sell, what he would call junk. We would load up the truck, hit up the flea market, and sell stuff. And I learned a lot of my selling techniques and my hustle mentality from my dad. And even my mom had a second home-based business growing up. So we're constantly always around this healthy environment of always becoming better and attaining more. And my brothers now kind of carry that and exemplify that to a T, what my dad did. And we kind of get together, and like I said, they're both part members of the Rotated Views podcast. So we kind of hone in on what the teachings of my father. And like I said, it's not like the guy wrote a book, but he could have.
No, that's interesting that you mentioned that, and I'm sorry for your loss in 2012. Your dad sounds like he was quite an amazing guy. But one of the things you shared about him is he led by example. And Paulo Coelho has a quote that the world is changed by examples, not by opinions. And I think that kind of echoes what your father talked about in regards to leading by example. And I think a lot of people, unfortunately, just talk the talk without walking the walk. And unfortunately, people see through that. And if you have a manager or a boss that tells you, okay, get in the office by 8 a.m. or always make those phone calls, and all of a sudden, you see that your boss is strolling in at 9:15, 9:30, and not to take a negative spin on that, but I really think that people that lead by example have so many more followers that stand by them, and I just think your dad sounds like quite an interesting guy, and definitely would have loved to have spent some time with him. And some of those flea market stories sound like they were probably a lot of fun growing up.
Oh yeah, well said, and thank you. There's one story real quick, if I could squeeze it in, where my dad had to use the bathroom so bad, and it was just me and him, and I was on an 8-year-old kid, and we just had set up. He had coffee, he was drinking water. He's like, I have to use the bathroom. I got to leave you because you couldn't just leave your stuff. Mind you, we're in the middle of New Jersey, and it's like 4 o'clock in the morning because you have to set up real early, and it's dark, and there's a bunch of people walking around, and the thieves are out there. So he came back and he held off till it was daylight, and it was about 7:30 in the morning. He's like, Jim, I really got to use the bathroom. I'll be back and I'll grab us some breakfast. So I said, all right. He's like, don't sell anything. I said, well, you're the first person who showed me how to sell everything. He goes, don't sell anything. Just tell people, my dad will be right back, and I'm just going to run to the bathroom and come back. Well, his best friend was selling, his stuff right next to us. So I was being supervised, but he was kind of taking care of his own customers. So by the time my dad came back 20 minutes later, apparently there was a line and he had to stay in line for food. I handed him $120. I was 8 years old. I was selling stuff for ridiculous prices. Now, the reasons why people bought it, I couldn't even tell you. But apparently, I sold a TV for like $50 that my dad only wanted like $10 for. It was broken. It didn't even work. So it was a fantastic story. My dad had this glow of pride every time he said this story. He's like, my 8-year-old son made $120 in 20 minutes. Top that.
Hopefully, he gave you some commission from that.
Oh yeah, for sure. And my mom was on him about that too.
That's a great story in regards to just, and it probably had an effect on you in regards to just getting out of your comfort zone and trying something.
Oh yeah, for sure. And my dad was, like I said, he was a reserved guy. He was a passive guy. He wasn't aggressive. Like I would say I'm a little bit more of an aggressive person, but just seeing all his, selling tactics, I used them to the T. Everything he taught me, I was literally like bartering with grown-ups. It was hysterical.
No, that is quite a story. I wish I could have seen an 8-year-old pawning a TV that didn't work for $50. That would have been a sight to see.
Sure.
If you could have dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Great question. That I love that question for the fact that I would always say Jesus Christ, but just to kind of give the listeners a different spin, I would actually say professional skateboarder and serial entrepreneur Rob Dyrdek. Rob Dyrdek has this creativeness about him, high energy, no fear. He's involved in everything. He has Fantasy Factory. He was on Robin Big, Ridiculousness. He had a skateboarding act, clothing lines. He donates skate parks. And I'm not even a skater. I mean, I attempted it. I had skateboards growing up and stuff like that, but I'm not, a professional in any way, but I still followed the guy because of his entrepreneurial spirit, but it was more his high energy. The guy is a straight up magnet. And I think he's only like 42 years old now. And what he has accomplished in the last 10 years, people couldn't even do in an entire lifetime. So it's completely impressive. I think he's even in the Guinness Book of World Records for like all this kinds of tricks and stuff that he did that he actually recorded live on TV. And even now he's basically holding together the skateboarding industry with what he's doing. So definitely, hands down, Mr. Relentless himself, Rob Dyrdek.
It's an interesting question in regards to just listening to people's responses and full and fair disclosure. I was and still am a big fan of Rob Dyrdek, but I was a big fan of Robin Big, and my wife and I actually bought a mini bulldog back in 2000 and I think it was 2007 or 2008, and the reason was 100% because of Robin Big when he went off and purchased his two dogs. But great story, and it's interesting is a lot of people don't know of him as a skateboarder. They might have seen, as you mentioned, Ridiculous or Robin Big. Fantasy Factory, but the reality is that he's been able to take a lot of his different things in life and turn them into other successful businesses or ventures. But the one thing that I think is similar is he works hard, and like you said, he is a magnet. And whether you like skating, don't like skating, don't know anything about it, it's irrelevant because he has that ability just to connect with people, and he does it in a positive fashion. He's always got a smile on his face, and even when he has some of these, pardon the terminology, ridiculous guests on, he just does it in such a positive way that you can't help but laugh and smile. And literally every time I watch that show with my wife, she just looks at me and she always says, you need to meet Rob one day because we're so similar. So here's my challenge to you is you and I are going to find a way to do some collaborative event or something with Rob Deerdeck. So that's to be determined. So put that on your to-do list.
Oh, definitely. We'll do it. And I think what you just said needs to be praised because you're absolutely right. The adjectives that you use to describe Rob Deerdeck are the exact reason why he's an actual magnet. And just really quick, if you can, for anyone who wants to encapsulate who he is and you want to become a magnet yourself, make every day an adventure and have fun. You could be doing the most redundant job day in and day out, whether you're on a factory line, whether you own your own business, whether you're even out there looking for a job or you're an entrepreneur. If you can make every single day an adventure and have fun, I think you got the key to success, my man.
That's a great quote. Make every day an adventure and have fun. If you have not trademarked that yet, I would highly recommend doing that.
Absolutely.
So what is next for Jimmy Lee? Is there anything specific or exciting that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, so back in 2015, when I kind of mentioned the motivation files, and to kind of go back a little bit further, the initial project was the motivation files, the book, and I did the audio portion. It was supposed to be like a promo for the book to kind of turn people on to the ideas and the concepts of what I was trying to deliver, and it flip-flopped. So talking about perseverance, and this is the No Quit Living podcast, I wanted to talk about that. I got a bunch of no's when it came to handing in my book and, it getting published. So I kind of flip-flopped my life and my thought process. So I actually sold the Motivation Files album and gave away my book, which you can still get at motivationfiles.com, and you can read up on the book. But it's a perfect way of adjusting. Life is about making adjustments as you move along, and you can avoid quitting if you can just make certain adjustments. And kind of has Christopher J. Worth here said that if you can get a coach maybe that can kind of guide you along the way and be your GPS and navigate you through the process, I feel like you're giving yourself a better chance and a better shot. So with that being said, the Motivation Files titled Unleashed is my next project. So the Motivation Files was kind of more of a mild, toned down version of motivation and inspiration that I kind of wanted even a high schooler, a middle schooler, or the elderly person to listen to and get motivated and inspired. But Unleashed is exactly how it sounds. It's kind of going to be a little bit more aggressive, a higher tone, in your face, get out of bed and make things happen.
No, that sounds really, really interesting in many different ways. Do you have a specific launch date for that, or is that to be determined?
Fourth quarter 2017. The month is to be determined. I'm trying to get people together, and once again, here we are. I have to switch around who I use for the first album because certain people are already out. So it's life throws you challenges, but I'm ready for them.
No, that's the only way to handle it. So I'm going to hold you to that. Fourth quarter 2017, actual month and day TBD.
Yes, sir.
Before we let you go, I wanted to ask if you have any parting words for our listeners.
Yes, the process from frustration to fulfillment. So if you're out there right now, first of all, good for you that you're listening to a podcast titled No Quit Living, something that's about to change your life. You might be right now receiving your paradigm shift. Stick with it. Do not quit. And there's a book that I eventually want to write that's titled From Frustration to Fulfillment. And that is kind of where, the track of success will lead you to, is that you want that fulfilling, satisfying attitude about life, so you can feel the attitude of gratitude when you're manifesting the life of your dreams. It's dream, ask, believe, act, achieve. I believe that even though I gave you guys the secret and what they had, portrayed and how to, use the law of attraction. That formula right there is exactly how I attained the life that I'm living right now and the life that I'll continue to live in the future. It's dream, ask, believe, act, achieve. There was a big missing component to the secret, and that was action, actually taking action on what you're dreaming about and what you're believing. And if you could just get that into your mentality that you have to take a little step in whatever direction it is, you're on your way.
And a follow-up to that too is one of the books that came out, I think it was probably the end of last year, was the stories about The Secret, where people actually were interviewed. And one of the things that they talk about so often during that book is ask, believe, and then receive. And a lot of times I think people don't do the asking or they don't do the believing. And if you don't do one of the two of them, you're not going to receive. And it's not a mantra, or it's not one of these self-help components. But I believe in anything you want to do in life is you have to first ask for it. So whether that's verbally to a boss or to a partner or to a spouse. Secondly, you have to really believe that you're going to get it, or you're going to obtain it, or you're going to have the opportunity to go after it. And then once you do that and you do the work, the other component to that too is you got to put in the work, then you will receive it. So I definitely appreciate you sharing that. And we got one last question, and I promise it's an easy one. But
sure.
What is the best way for our listeners to connect with you and or follow you?
Sure. So JimmyLeeVelez.com. You can visit the website. That's like kind of like my main hub. From there, you can attain my book. You can get the audio book. You can listen to the Rotated Views podcast. That's kind of my hub. So JimmyLeeVelez.com. JimmyLeeVelez. It's just my full name. You can follow me on Facebook. Jimmy Lee Velez 777. And on Instagram, Mr. Jimmy Lee Velez.
Well, listen, I truly appreciate not only your time, but your positive insight as well, and your belief in personal development clearly shines through everything you say. So again, for those listeners out there, if you have not taken a listen to Jimmy Lee's podcast, I would highly recommend it. It's Rotated Views, and it's one of the top-rated podcast on iTunes. And if you get a chance, listen to episode number 55. I think that might be the best episode yet, but I might be biased. I'm not sure.
Hands down. And one last thing, if everyone can take this kind of concept that Christopher J. Worth, he's out there delivering the information and content needed to inspire and motivate you guys. The guy is making big moves. Stay tuned. There's big things coming. Me and him had, private conversations that he has some things in store for you guys. Stay tuned. Listen to every episode. If you missed one or two, go back and listen to them. They're a quick 30, 40 minutes, whatever it is. They're fantastic content. And that's where you start. You humble yourself. Me and this guy had a conversation for about an hour and a half the first time we ever connected. He mentioned one author. He mentioned one book. He said, this is one of the books that kind of, changed my mentality. And guess what I did? I humbled myself. I never even heard of the book. And right here, right now, although most of you guys cannot see it, but me and Christopher are actually talking through video and Skype, I actually ordered the book as soon as we got off the phone. Well, here it is, Christopher. Nice. Jeffrey Gitomer's 21.5 Unbreakable Laws of Selling. And it was just one of those things. It was in our conversation. And if you could just open your mind and accept the information that's being said, even myself, 10 years into the personal development industry, and I still humble myself and take recommendations, you're well on your way.
I appreciate it, my man. I will send you that check for that nice nice remarks. But listen, again, I can't thank you enough. And again, check out Rotated Views. And Jimmy Lee, definitely look forward to speaking with you soon, my man. To sum up today's episode and our theme of the day, leading by example, Jimmy Lee delivered some powerful words. He shared a story about his father and how he led by example and the positive impact it had on his family. Jimmy Lee's passion clearly shines through his words, and he truly leads by example when it comes to motivating people to become the best versions of themselves. In his parting words, Jimmy Lee spoke about making every day an adventure and having fun. So the question to you is, what will today bring? Will it be a great adventure, and will you attack it with a positive mindset? I challenge you to make today a great day and to have fun along the way. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time.
and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.